I didn't think that I got enough death threats, so I'm going to be making another video on why Captain Jack ships are bad. This time, it's going to be with the updated, quote, updated, 2021 RWI Defender instead of the old 2016 one, because about a couple trillion people pointed out that this one was old and outdated and I shouldn't be basing it off of it, but it doesn't really matter because these two really aren't that different. I mean, he didn't even bother to change up where the lines on the paint were, which is arguably the worst part of the ship. So, let's begin with why this ship looks just as bad as this ship. Now, for starters, look at all these lines. Now, the idea behind this isn't terrible. You've got heavy armor, right? You take the heavy armor, and if you get rammed or something, bonk, the heavy armor stops it. And that's a pretty good way to avoid getting rammed. But in normal Space Engineers combat, the likelihood that you're going to get rammed by something that is going to consider these heavy armor blocks a threat is quite low. Usually with ramming, there's either no ramming at all, or if you are going to ram, you build a ship specifically for ramming, and it's super effective, and it uses drills and everything. And it would just blast right through this. So, I guess in his universe, these are great for stopping rams, but that said, because it's Captain Jack, in his universe, the rams are going to be scripted, and they're going to come out in a way where his side always wins. So, yeah. It's an idea. Is it effective? Perhaps not. This ship looks bad. I think I've said this a trillion times now, but it looks bad. We're going to once again go over why. All of this heavy armor here means that there's also gaps between heavy and light armor, and this leads to these armor lines here. Now, I have to say that while armor lines are present here, they aren't present in other places, and I think Space Engineers might just want to have a setting in graphics that can just flat out turn these guys off. Most people just don't like these. And in the end, having a lot of armor lines is just like, oh no, keen. That's unfortunate. However, most builders actively go out of their way to make sure that the stuff they build doesn't involve that much lines. So they'll build with blocks that don't do that much in terms of lines, or build in a way where there's not that many things that have lines. And that's pretty smart. However, here, Jack seems to have made sure that he uses as many lines on his ship as possible. For example, right here with these armor slopes, I know you need a 3x3 or a 3x1 armor slope, but you don't really need a 3x1 armor slope. It's just for people who can't build that way without using other blocks. And in places like down here, we have 2x1 armor slopes, which already exist in-game and have existed for a very long time in-game. Yet, Jack is still using these slopes here, and keep in mind this ship was built in 2021, so good job refitting. You can see them here, but not here. I don't understand. It's weird. The other point I was going to talk about, and that I talked about last time, was this. You don't want to do this, mostly because you have this jump here that's absolutely useless because the two thrusters are right next to each other. Normally, why you'd want to have this dip in the hull so the thrusters can pop out is because you've got a large flat plane of armor, and the thrusters are embedded in that armor panel. However, you would only want this here if, let's get an actual block out, if there was armor like this. Then this would be more acceptable, and also you usually want straight lines instead of sloped lines. So, if the armor looked like this kind of building would be acceptable, but if it looks like this, and you've got another thruster right next to it, you don't want to have the armor slope up to the normal armor height, and then immediately slope back down with no flat space at all. Don't do that. So the easy way to get around that is simply just don't have that, and go like this, and then go like this. And this means you've got much straighter, nicer lines with which to do stuff. And you don't have all these jutting protrusions. In general, those protrusions also look pretty bad. For example, right here, just having this like point here doesn't really look good in the first place, especially when it's so square. Thrusters are round, and you usually want to reflect that in your builds by building around them in a way that is round. But in this way, there just kind of seems to be a sloped square that comes in and doesn't really look that good. Especially considering that there's no flat surface here to transition between the square and the round, and these armor lines also further exemplify the squareness. So in this case, what you'd probably want to do is either go like this and just use this, which arguably doesn't look that good either, or you would want to go... Let's see if I can find it with my HUD off. Like this. You'd want to go like this and actually have flat space. The best way to avoid this these armor like things here, I guess I've got it painted weirdly, so I could go like this. But the best way to avoid having those like armored spots is do this, and then you get rid of the lines. So Jack could have done that. Same thing down here. Same thing here. You might notice that a couple of the blocks are missing. I don't have all the mods installed, but there's like a big gun down there, and there's Atmo thrusters in here and stuff. Oh, this is interesting. So this here is, I would say, the singular portion of Grebel on the entire ship is this. I don't know why it's here. It just is like completely out of the blue, completely random. But it's here. So props to Jack for actually learning how to use Grebel in the 5 years between that ship and this ship. This is like the one improvement total. And I'm honestly surprised that Jack hasn't gotten that good at using Grebel, or even like figuring out what Grebel is. Because he has about 5,000 hours on this game, actually well over 5,000 hours on this game. And I only have 2,000, and I can build a lot better than him. I usually don't like to toot my own horn, so to speak, but I would say that my builds are better than Jack's, because most people's builds are better than Jack's. Maybe my first ship might have not been better than Jack, but definitely by like the end of 1,000 hours, I could build far better than Jack. Because he just builds so bad, and he has 5,000 hours, and it just doesn't seem right. The math doesn't add up. So, this, yeah. When you're building hangars, you really don't want to expose these top blocks if you don't expose these bottom blocks. It's called symmetry. It's a concept that most people get. And I know you might want a 5-block tall hangar. However, sometimes you need to make those compromises and have a 4-block high hangar. Speaking of hangars, this hangar is the only way to get into the ship. So a little bit of survival issues with building is that there is literally no other way to get into the ship besides that hangar. And considering that there's no buttons to open this hangar, in order to get in, I need to use my spectator cam and fly through this door. So, next thing that looks bad, this is just terrible. It doesn't look good at all. Ships don't really have flames on them, especially not when they are a square. Putting flames on a square is a great way to just be like, my ship does not fit the style at all, and kind of contradict everything. If your ship was like more of a phoenix, maybe a winged shape, that would be kind of cool. But in this case, it's not cool. Also, with the bridge, you don't want just flat bridges that stick up. Your bridges kind of need to fit with the hull. And while it does a bit back here, this front is a little bit too flat. and it just is kind of like straight up and bam bridge. Sometimes it's nice to inset the bridge into the hull more. This turret placement is really bad. So what you want to do with turrets is you want to give them enough space and enough mounting points to feel like they're actually a part of the ship. So when I've got, let's say I wanted to put an artillery turret here, or what about one of these modded turrets? We got this Cyclone Strike Cannon. I wouldn't just place this here, right? Because it's just a gun there. You don't want that. You want there to be some sort of a mounting point for this turret. So I'll paint this green to show how it goes. If it goes, it'll paint eventually. So you kind of want this like point up here where you can place this turret. This also gives you space to have turrets super firing. So, for example, you could have a mounting point for this turret that's a bit lower, and this one could be a bit higher, and that would allow this turret to shoot over this turret. So when you're aiming straight at somebody, you can shoot at them perfectly fine. This spot back here is bad because it's just really, really flat. And I know Jack did give a arguably very feeble effort, but at least an effort at making this not flat. He should have figured out what to do with this, maybe added some vents. This would be a perfect spot for side thrusters. You could put some side thrusters in here. You could put a door and an airlock. There's a whole bunch of things you can do with this flat exterior space that's just sitting here. Same with this flat exterior space. There really isn't much behind this. Yeah, it's just more thrusters. So you can easily add some Grebel here. You can add some weapons here. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do. And even down here, like I guess there's a big gun right here. There's a flat space here. You could add weapons here. You could add heat vents there. Down here, under here, you don't really have that much space because there is the hangar here. But you still can add some stuff, especially landing gear, considering the ship is designed to land on planets. You will want some landing gear down here, and maybe even an exit bay, like right here. So when you land, you can have a door. I don't think I've got a door. I don't. Actually, I do. So when you land, you can kind of just like have a door here and be able to immediately just walk out onto the surface. That would be pretty nice, especially for like ground landings and assaults. I think that pretty much sums up the entire ship. It's very flat, it's very square, the shape isn't good at all. You should try to find better shapes, and if you are going to make a square, at least make it a square with Grebel. Nobody likes a flat square. So I will admit, this video was a bit more, like, clumped together, a bit more, concise, and honestly, I don't really put out my hatred of Jack in this video. Also, by the way, I got banned from his server. Let's go. Which is great news, honestly. The fact that I got banned from his server either means he was like a ban wave and I wasn't active enough. However, the most likely thing is that my video on his server sucking actually got through. The point was to send a message, and oh boy, did I send that message. So yeah, that's good. I can now brag about it. All my friends, they haven't been banned yet. They're upset. I got banned. They didn't. Yeah. So yeah, these are this ship. It's really bad. I could make it better really quickly. But I don't want to because it's honestly just... It's just a joke. So next, I'm going to look at some other RWI ships in some other videos. Possibly talk about how they're much better than this one, how they're much worse. I would like to address one comment that was on my video that they said Jack ships may look worse, but they can take more damage than your ships. So what they did is they set Jack's ship up and they shot at one of my ships with it. The ship in question happened to be the Mantis destroyer here, which, as you can see, they said it took like 2 to 3 seconds for it to get to the hydrogen tanks. I think that's a pretty fair estimate. A ship of this size definitely would shoot into the hydrogen tanks of the Mantis at this rate. And doing that, they proved that my ships are, in fact, worse than Jack's ships. Yeah. You can definitely see these are very similar ships. Furthermore, my ship, they shot at it while it was sitting still, which is all PvP players know that in order to win combat, you sit still, so you take all the shots. Because if you dodge the shots, they're going to go flying off into space, and your server's going to crash, because they're like all the way over there. That's why nobody uses clan guns, because they'll just fly away, right? So you want to take the shots so that your world doesn't crash. That's why this ship is bad, because it has all this upthrust, and it can dodge a lot. So, if it dodges too much, it won't take shots, and your world will crash because there's so many bullets flying around. So yeah, I will admit this ship is a lot worse than this ship because it just has to sit there and take it. And also it's not using modded weapons because all vanilla players know that modded is better than vanilla. And modded weapons are actually worse than vanilla weapons, believe it or not. So, for example, the artillery turret, it's actually way, way, way better than this Tempest strike cannon, which can blow an entire hole in another ship. Well, the artillery cannon, right, it doesn't deal as much damage to the ship, which means you'll stay in the fight for longer, so you'll have more fun. That's why modded weapons are worse than normal weapons, because modded weapons blow up the enemy ship too quickly, so you don't have fun. Yeah. So, this ship is better than this ship because this ship can't dodge. This ship is a brick. It looks like trash. This is satire. This ship actually looks better than this ship. Why? Because it's not as contrasty. This was a rant. Yeah. Enjoy your day.